my mama was so scared for me to even be involved.
Lil Wayne once described himself as feeling like a prisoner, filed a $51 million lawsuit against Birdman, and even had his tour bus targeted in a shooting during the controversy. Juvenile also took legal action against Cash Money after walking away from a triple platinum run, claiming the contract terms were so poor that he wouldn't see income for years. Now, rappers from different eras are speaking out about why they've had serious issues with Birdman, citing alleged mismanagement, unpaid earnings, and broken promises. Lil Wayne's story stands out the most. Want to dive into a situation that shocked hip-hop fans around the world? Let's start with one of the most talked about conflicts, Birdman versus Lil Wayne. For those unfamiliar with the background, Wayne first met Birdman on the streets of New Orleans at a very young age. When he was around 11 years old, Birdman took him under his wing and signed him to Cash Money Records, becoming a mentor and father figure. Wayne has also spoken about Birdman's reputation in New Orleans at the time. He wasn't just a record executive. Long before the music industry fully recognized him, his name was already well known in the streets. Here's what Wayne shared about his mother's reaction when he signed with Birdman.
That name way before there was rap, before there was a Cash Money Records, that name held weight. You know, my mama went to school with him. My mama was so scared for me to even be involved with him. You know what I mean? All she would say was like, boy, that boy was 14 with $1 million. Like, ain't nobody on it now. I don't know how you got it. That was 14. I don't.
We are discussing a man whose name was well known on the streets even before he became known in rap. Lil Wayne's stepfather was murdered, and his biological father left, so Birdman stepped in as a father figure. They became extremely close, so close that photos of them sharing a kiss went viral, which Birdman described as a father-son gesture. That's how strong their bond was. However, in 2014, Wayne and Birdman's relationship completely fell apart. Wayne alleged that Birdman was essentially keeping him stuck on the label, holding his album The Carter V hostage, and not paying him the advances he was owed. Back in 2005, Wayne had started Young Money Entertainment as an imprint under Cash Money and signed major artists like Drake and Nicki Minaj. Cash Money owned 51% of Young Money, while Wayne held 49%, a deal meant to share profits but one that later led to disputes. On December 4, 2014, Wayne tweeted, "I want off this label and nothing to do with these people," adding that he felt creatively trapped. Because Wayne was the artist who helped build Cash Money into a powerhouse, that statement shook the culture. His manager, Cortez Bryant, supported him publicly, noting Wayne's loyalty to the label for over a decade. In January 2015, Wayne sued Cash Money Records for $51 million, claiming unpaid royalties from Young Money artists, an $8 million advance for the Carter V, and an additional $2 million for completing the album. He also accused Birdman and Universal of financial misconduct, alleging that large advances tied to Young Money were mishandled. Around April 2015, Wayne's tour bus was targeted in a shooting in Atlanta during a performance. Thankfully, no one was injured. Reports later connected an associate, Pee Wee Roscoe, to the incident, while Birdman and Young Thug were never charged. There were also claims that Birdman was trying to position Young Thug as Wayne's replacement, even leading to the project title Barter 6. Eventually, in 2018, the dispute was resolved. Wayne was released from Cash Money, received a financial settlement from Universal, and regained control of his music. That same year, the Carter V was finally released and sold around 480,000 copies in its first week. Over time, Wayne and Birdman publicly reconciled, appearing together on stage and in social media posts. But for a while, it seemed like their father-son relationship had been permanently damaged over money. Before Wayne's situation, Juvenile had already shown signs of similar issues within Cash Money. As one of the label's biggest stars, he released major hits like Ha and Back That Is Up, along with the album 400 Degrees, which went multi-platinum. His later projects also achieved strong success, including chart-topping tracks like Slow Motion. However, Juvenile left Cash Money in the early 2000s due to financial disputes, claiming he wasn't being paid properly and that contracts were poorly handled, delaying his royalties. He explained that it wasn't personal but rather bad business practices, although he felt that artists like himself, Turk, and BG did not receive fair compensation while Birdman and Slim benefited more. Reports suggest he even pursued legal action over unpaid royalties. The conflict later became public, with both sides exchanging criticism in interviews. BG, another key figure in the Hot Boys and New Orleans music scene, also had similar issues. He helped shape the label's success with projects like Chopper City in the Ghetto and the hit Bling Bling, which became a cultural term. Despite his contributions, BG left Cash Money in the early 2000s, citing unpaid royalties and financial disagreements. Along with Juvenile and Turk, he challenged the label legally, and although they later reconciled briefly, tensions remained. BG was later incarcerated and spent years in prison, during which he reportedly felt abandoned by the label. After his release in 2023, Birdman welcomed him back publicly and supported him, but lingering emotions from past issues remained. At one point, BG even released a diss track aimed at Cash Money, though Birdman ultimately chose to move past it, showing how complicated and long-lasting these relationships have been within the label's history. BG explained that when he gets emotional, he sometimes channels it directly in the booth, speaking from the heart and releasing everything through music. Birdman understood this, given their long history, which goes back decades. BG even described his mother's home in the 1980s as a stash house, showing how deep their roots run. Now, if we're talking about someone who has been very outspoken about issues with Cash Money, we have to mention Turk. Over the years, Turk has openly criticized Birdman and even some of his former group members. Unlike BG, Turk's situation with Cash Money has never fully been resolved. He joined the label at just 13 years old as part of the Hot Boys after being discovered by Birdman. Their debut album, Get It How You Live, in 1997 sold around 400,000 copies, and their 1999 album Guerrilla Warfare reached number 5 on the Billboard 200 while topping the R&B or hip-hop chart. Despite that success, Turk left Cash Money in 2003 alongside Juvenile and BG, citing unpaid royalties and claiming he wasn't compensated for his contributions to dozens of records. In 2004, Turk was arrested during a narcotics raid that escalated into a SWAT standoff and was later sentenced to 14 years in prison. He served nearly 9 years before being released in 2012. This experience shaped how he viewed the label moving forward. Unlike BG, who was publicly welcomed back and supported after his release, Turk stated that Birdman didn't acknowledge his return, which he felt spoke volumes. In 2015, Turk filed a lawsuit against Cash Money seeking control of his music and over $1 million in damages, arguing that contracts were invalid due to poor accounting practices. The case was later settled out of court for about $1.3 million, which Turk described as more like severance and said it did not include publishing rights. In 2016, he briefly reconnected with Cash Money, but nothing substantial came from it. More recently, attempts to reunite the Hot Boys brought renewed tension. Turk was expected to join the group for a 30th anniversary tour in 2025, but things quickly fell apart, especially after reports that he declined a reduced payment offer, which led to further disagreements. And Turk said, "Excuse out my cap," referring to the entire security threat. Then, in October 2025, while Turk was at home hosting his own watch party because he wasn't invited, Birdman reportedly called him live from the stage during a Cash Money vs. No Limit versus event, saying, "We'll deal with you when we want to." Turk also took shots at BG, criticizing him and even mocking his appearance at the event. This situation shows just how tense things remain within the Cash Money circle. Promoters later filed a $12 million lawsuit against Turk, alleging he disrupted the tour, while Turk had already filed his own $300,000 claim, making it clear that this dispute is far from over. When discussing the sound of Cash Money, Manny Fresh's name has to be respected. He produced many of the label's biggest hits from the late 1990s and early 2000s, including Go DJ, Bling Bling, Still Fly, and Back That Ass Up. After joining Cash Money in 1993, he helped define their signature sound with New Orleans bounce influences, heavy bass, and synth-driven production. Beyond producing, Manny also partnered with Birdman as part of the Big Timmis, releasing the platinum-selling album Hood Rich in 2002. However, despite their early success, Manny left Cash Money in 2005 due to financial disagreements and a desire for creative freedom, as he wanted to explore other genres like gospel and rock. He later explained that he didn't feel properly compensated for the production work that helped build the label's identity, noting differences between reported earnings and the label's lifestyle. Manny has been open about the challenges of mixing business with personal relationships, emphasizing that friends and family aren't always equipped to handle professional responsibilities. After his departure, tensions rose, though he later settled legal matters with the label and continued pursuing royalties for years. Following his exit, he worked with Def Jam South and collaborated with artists like Jeezy, describing that period as a major turning point in his career. Now, another major figure in this discussion is Jilly the Kid. For years, Jilly has claimed that he contributed writing ideas to early Lil Wayne projects, though Wayne, Birdman, and Cash Money have consistently denied these claims. Jilly was briefly signed to Cash Money in the early 2000s but left in 2003 due to financial disputes, alleging unfair publishing agreements. Over time, the tension between Jilly and Birdman continued through interviews, diss tracks, and public exchanges. In 2023, Birdman dismissed Jilly's claims, stating he never made money from him and that Jilly didn't contribute to Wayne's music. The feud resurfaced again when Birdman shared a story questioning Jilly's credibility, which Jilly quickly denied, responding with his own statements and dismissing the claims. Despite all the tension, Jilly has also acknowledged that he respects Birdman's hustle and business mindset. That's something many people recognize. Birdman played a major role in building Cash Money from the ground up, helping turn local New Orleans artists into global names, including Lil Wayne, Drake, and Nicki Minaj. Even critics admit that his impact on the industry is significant. Moving on, one of the longest-running conflicts involves Pusha T and Cash Money. The tension reportedly dates back to the early 2000s, tied to disputes involving production credits and business dealings connected to the Neptunes. Over time, the situation evolved into a broader rivalry, with Pusha T and Lil Wayne exchanging comments and subliminal shots in interviews and music. The conflict intensified in 2012 when Pusha T released a track criticizing complex label deals, which many interpreted as a jab at Cash Money's structure. Wayne responded, and the back and forth continued over the years, with both sides occasionally revisiting the issue in music and interviews. Even into recent years, the tension has remained part of hip-hop discussions. Another notable situation involves Rick Ross, who once had a strong working relationship with Birdman. They collaborated on projects and shared mutual respect within Southern hip-hop. However, Ross later expressed concerns after seeing how Lil Wayne's situation with Cash Money unfolded. In 2015 and 2017, Ross released music that many interpreted as criticism of Birdman, emphasizing the importance of artists being properly compensated. In interviews, Ross explained that his perspective changed after observing Wayne's struggles, stating that respect in the industry should include fair business practices. Birdman, on the other hand, responded by focusing on his work and success, stating that he stays focused on results and numbers. Despite the disagreements, these situations highlight the complex relationships, business challenges, and long-standing tensions that have shaped the legacy of Cash Money Records. Although Tigger's major label albums Careless World, Hotel California, and the Gold Album, 18th Dynasty generated revenue, they also came with significant expenses that contributed to his dispute with Cash Money. By October 2014, Tigger publicly claimed that the label was holding his album hostage, stating on Twitter that the project was complete but delayed due to label politics. At the same time, Lil Wayne was facing similar issues with the Carter V, highlighting growing tension within Young Money or Cash Money. In interviews, Birdman addressed the situation without directly criticizing Tigger, describing the circumstances as unfortunate. In 2015, Tigger moved forward independently and released his album through his own imprint, Last Kings Records, signaling his intent to separate from Cash Money. During a 2017 appearance on The Breakfast Club, Tigger claimed the label owed him between $12 and $15 million in royalties from hits like Rack City, stating that he was waiting for Lil Wayne's case to be resolved before taking further legal action. In August 2018, Tigger filed a lawsuit against Birdman, Lil Wayne, Cash Money, and Young Money for breach of contract, initially seeking around $1 million in unpaid royalties, though later filings increased that claim to approximately $10 million, focusing on songs like Make It Nasty, Faded, and revenue from his albums. In response, Cash Money argued that Tigger owed money due to advances and expenses, presenting accounting records to support their position. After negotiations failed, Tigger voluntarily dismissed the lawsuit in April 2019 without a settlement, and the case ended without further escalation, though Birdman later rejected Tigger's claims in subsequent interviews. Moving on to a more recent situation, Birdman also developed a close relationship with NBA YoungBoy, taking the Baton Rouge artist under his wing around 2018 and publicly praising his potential. In 2021, they released a collaborative project titled From the Bayou, highlighting their shared Louisiana roots. However, subtle warnings surfaced earlier, including a line from Lil Wayne in 2020 that many interpreted as advice to be cautious, referencing past industry conflicts. Tension appeared again in 2024 when NBA YoungBoy released a track expressing feelings of betrayal, with lyrics that some listeners believed were directed toward Birdman and others in his circle. Reactions among fans were mixed, with some viewing the song as a direct message while others saw it as part of his usual themes. Despite this, by mid-2025, the situation seemed to improve, as the two were seen together publicly in New Orleans, signaling a reconciliation. Birdman later joined NBA YoungBoy on tour and spoke positively about his future, emphasizing his talent and success. They continued collaborating musically and appearing together at events, suggesting that their relationship had stabilized for the time being. Overall, these situations reflect a recurring pattern of complex relationships, business disputes, and eventual reconciliations within Cash Money's history. This brings the story to a close, exploring the rise, conflicts, and lasting impact of one of hip-hop's most influential labels.